we don't know what's going on with these pictures. We're going to share them with you. Have a look at it, and then I'll tell you as much as we know. Yeah, that is blood, we're told, on that horse. 2 horses are loose. They are in central London. They're still loose, we're told. One of them, the white one, as you can see, appeared to be covered in blood. The animals wearing saddles and bridles, seen running in the road. A Metropolitan Police spokesman said, "We are aware of a number of horses on the loose in central London. We're working with colleagues in the army to locate them." Another photograph of the 2 horses. Again, that is certainly, I think, down the Aldwych. Certainly that picture is along Kingsway, I think. I'm right in saying, looking at that.
I think so. There's barracks at Aldwych, is there not, in that direction?
There are, but I think the earlier picture was in a different part of central London. Interesting that the army are involved as well. That would suggest, there you go, that would suggest that the horses are
yes,
army horses.
If you were to go down to kind of Hyde Park, for example, in a morning, you often see, don't you, the military exercising.
There is barracks there. And Wellington Barracks as well.
So not unusual to see the military exercising their horses in the city, but obviously don't quite know at the moment the relationship and where they've come from. But hugely distressing for those 2 horses as well to
absolutely
be in that
people
position.
That are witnessing that. One of the white horse looked to be covered in blood.
Well, it's hard to know. Is it blood? Is it paint?
Yeah.
We need to kind of try and figure out what
don't know
what
is
it
the answer.
is.
There's the image at the moment. Is it blood or is it paint?
We'd hope it'd be paint rather
We
than...
sincerely hope so. We are told that the horses are still on the loose at the moment, and the fact, as we were saying, that the army is involved in trying to track them down. They probably know where they are, but actually trying to calm them down enough to bring them back under control is going to be a challenge.
Hugely so. You know, if you think of a horse, for example, kind of easily do 30 miles an hour. They're big animals. Kind of that's 300, 400, 500 kilos. It's you know it's not for the public to try and get in the way to try and slow them or stop them down. They are flight animals after all. They will do what they do naturally.
We're not sure that horse. We shouldn't say that it's covered in blood. It looks as though it is, but we don't know what it is. So we're not jumping to conclusions as yet.
Fingers crossed they are found soon and safe.
And calmed down again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tricky for all involved.
This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. Well, another story out there that obviously the first thing most people think of when they see that is a message. What is the message behind this story? How do 2 horses or multiple horses get loose, one of which conveniently is covered in blood running around the streets of London? And when I saw this story, obviously when I see a story about horses, I think of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But I also think of a lot of the stuff that I've covered over the years where they're showing us signs using their CIA assets, their mind control puppets, their musicians, Hollywood, etc., where they're showing us clearly horses being used to send us a message, right? We know that they've been using the pale horse. Beyonce's been using the red horse. In fact, Beyonce just recently used the white horse once again. And of course, the black horse. So they're using the horses and they're showing us signs and messaging. This is not a random story where 4 horses just broke loose or whatever horses they claim broke loose, where 4 people were injured. And you saw some of the footage of the horses running amok in the streets, because this is coinciding at the same exact time, right? So you have the horses running free in the UK. This is making national news. This isn't just somebody filming it on TikTok, with their camcorder or whatever you want to call it, their cell phone, their camcorder, their cell phone, and uploading it to TikTok. This is all over the news, right? This is on Sky News in Australia. It's on the news in America. And then at the same exact time, remember the other story that's out there. The Jews are preparing to slaughter the red heifers. And I will go into more detail in a separate video about this. Now, the symbolism that I'm seeing here, because remember, the Jews are, this is a simulation that we're seeing occur with the red heifer sacrifice. Remember, the Messiah who is to come, who is to be worshiped by the Jews, is the Antichrist. So it's no coincidence that these horses are running free. And again, that we've seen and I've covered many times over, celebrities like Beyonce, she just came out with an album where she's sitting on the white horse and, of course, holding up the American flag. So let's take a look at what the Bible verses say about the white horse, which again, the white horse we saw running the streets in London was covered in blood. And it looked like it was almost smeared on the chest of the horse deliberately. In the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. So the symbolism is conquering and conquer. And then you take the Bible verse about the black horse of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 6, verse 5, and when he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, "Come." And I saw, and behold, a black horse, and he who sits on it had a balance in his hand. And the black horse of Revelation symbolizes famine. The white horse can be interpreted multiple ways. Many believe that the white horse symbolizes righteousness, that the rider of the white horse is Jesus Christ. That's what a lot of teachers preach. And I'm not going to go against that. I'm just going to talk to you about having your mind open to the rider of the white horse being the Antichrist, because many out there interpret it as the inversion of Jesus Christ. We know white is a color that means purity, but we also know that the first horseman of the rider of the horse is a conqueror. The book of Revelation goes on into chapter 19, verses 11 through 16 to say, "Then I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems, and he has a name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. From his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God the Almighty. On his robe, on his thigh, he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." So, we see these verses in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, right? Famine, war. And then we look at what's going on in the world around us. We see that they're using geoengineering to create famine. They're using geoengineering into manipulating people out there into thinking that this has something to do with the climate. We also see the rumors of war, right? In this specific verse, in Revelation chapter 19, verse 13, he says, "He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood." The white horse, just conveniently that they let loose here, was covered in blood. The chest of the horse was covered in blood. So if you're wondering if I'm saying if this is a sign from God, I'm saying that this is a sign from them doing this deliberately, because what it seems like they're doing here is trying to mimic Scripture and show us these things that are to come while mocking us, but also revealing to us. And if you take the interpretation in Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2, about the white horse being the conqueror, you have to remember there's also the interpretation of the rider of the white horse, the conqueror, actually being the Antichrist. And why do I say that? Because at the same exact time that this story happens, which seems like a formulated story, right? It seems like they let them loose. I'm not saying that the horses weren't loose in London. What I'm saying is the story is out there for a reason. The horses were let loose for a reason. We've never heard a story like this before, right? Where horses were running through the streets, and specifically one who was white was covered in blood. But at the same exact time of these horses being released, If you look into the red heifer story, which I'll cover in a separate video, right? The Jews are preparing to slaughter the red heifers, okay? Once they do this with the red heifers, which they're talking about doing very, very soon now, in the coming weeks, isn't just a rumor anymore, right? A couple years ago, they purchased the heifers from Texas. They've been over there and everybody's been speculating about it. They're telling you that it's coming, right? And of course, that coincides with everything that happened in October over in that strip of land that became the state of Israel in 1948. So after they do the sacrifice of the red heifers, they now have an open reason to go and blow up the Dome of the Rock, because that's the specific spot that they are going to build the third temple. But what Christians don't realize is that the third temple being built brings about the coming of the Jewish Messiah. And the Jewish Messiah is the Antichrist. It's very clear that the Jewish Messiah is the Antichrist. I don't know what Christians, they're looking at this and they're going, this is great. We're going to sacrifice the red heifers. The end is near. Jesus is returning. They don't seem to realize that biblically, the way this plays out with them sacrificing the red heifers and then putting the dome, blowing up the Dome of the Rock and then building the third temple coincides with the arrival of the Jewish Messiah. So do people not realize that the Jewish Messiah is not Jesus Christ? They've already rejected Jesus Christ. And when the Bible talks to us and tells us specifically about them who say they are Jews and are not, and are of the synagogue of Satan, wouldn't that tell us that the coming Messiah for the specific people who claim to be something that they're not is in fact the Antichrist? So the symbolism of the white horse, along with the symbolism of the red heifers, could be a sign of the revealing of the coming of the Antichrist. I'm just saying that. Now, some of you out there might not agree with how I look at these things and interpret these things. I know a lot of people out there, they like my channel, you know, people who watch my channel and like my channel, they disagree with my take on a lot of this stuff, specifically with the weather. And they feel like every single weather event that's happening is a weather event from God. And I'm not giving the devil and his minions power and authority over God. I'm not saying that God can't thwart their plans. What I'm telling you is that they have the ability to manipulate the weather. It is very clear. It is very, very real. People out there still don't want to accept that because they want to think the only person who controls the weather is God. I'm not saying that these people can't manipulate the weather and then God intervene. I think we've seen that plenty of times. I think a lot of these things they've tried to do in Florida with a lot of these hurricanes that they've told us coming in, we're going to be, category 5, the biggest that we've ever seen. I think that they were thwarted by God. I think God had different plans than their plans. So I think obviously that they do manipulate the weather, but God has the ultimate authority. And I believe the case with a lot of these stories that we see about red heifers is them mimicking scripture. I believe there's deceptions to come out of these things. The synagogue of Satan knows exactly how to play Christians and manipulate Christians. They're doing it right now. Every single Christian and every single church out there is literally in bed with the devil, because every single 501c3 church is telling them that this specific piece of land, they're not giving them the history on that land in 1948. They're not telling them, in 1948, then they kind of started naming themselves that and started building up a massive military arsenal. We really are just an industrial complex over there. Nobody knows that, right? They just go, they've been victim. The people, they're God's chosen people. Whatever they do, and every single church you've heard them over the last 6 months or so, everything they've said is that they can do no wrong. He who goes against them goes against God. So every Christian is being duped into whatever they're doing. I'm in. I'm on board. Right? They're bringing up 9/11, all these other things to get them even more gaslit into siding with them. And they're 100% in. They're not 99% in. They're 100% in. So they see this stuff and then it's not clicking in their heads that they could be mimicking this, that they could be doing this to deceive Christians, which is exactly what they are doing. And I see a lot of Palestinians out there who are warning Christians that they're falling for the Zionist deception. And they're not listening. They don't want to hear it. They're only hearing what their 501c3 preachers who are mandated to side with the state of Israel, not Israel itself or who the real people of Israel are, the state of Israel. So think about the devil and his plans and how Christians are literally going to be, if the Bible references the synagogue of Satan, right? And we all look at it, we're like, oh, wow, the synagogue of Satan, those who claim to be Jews and who aren't. Well, it's pretty clear to see who that is, right? Okay, now think about how scary this is. Christians are in bed with the devil. Christians are 100% supporting the synagogue of Satan. And the synagogue of Satan, along the way of their taking their support and having them by their sides, are deceiving them. They're deceiving them at this red heifer sacrifice. They're even deceiving them to the point where Christians are going, oh, they're going to build a third temple. I don't really grasp this, but this means that it's coming to an end and God's going to return. Yay! And they don't realize that they're building this temple. Okay, the Jews have been waiting for their Messiah, right? In order for the Jews to rebuild the temple and prepare the way for the return of the Messiah, they have to sacrifice the heifers. But the Messiah that they're waiting for is not our Messiah. He's not the true Messiah, Jesus Christ. It is the Antichrist. So do Christians not grasp that? Apparently they don't. Okay? So stories like this need to be noted because, again, I've talked about this with people like Beyonce. I know we can look at it, we can be like, oh, who cares about Beyonce? Who cares about some of these celebrities and what they're doing? But it coincides because they're showing us all over the place the symbolism of the white horse, which tells me they're telling us the conqueror, the Antichrist, is near. And when we see the stuff going on in Israel that they're doing, simulating this, doing it deliberately, and then baiting Christians into celebrating this and being on board with this and wanting to blow up the Dome of the Rock and wanting the third temple to be rebuilt there, not understanding the coming Messiah is the Antichrist, right? At the same time, we see a lot of black horse symbolism, right? Think about that with famine. The black horse with famine, right? Beyonce obsessed with the black horse. All these celebrities obsessed doing photo shoots on the covers of magazines like Vogue, sitting on black horses. Okay? The famine that is to come. You're noticing the food shortages? These aren't famines that are being caused by God. These are famines that they're causing. The Bible talks about great famines. They're causing famines. They're manipulating the weather and causing famines. Farmers aren't able to grow their crops because of the geoengineering going on, because they're blocking out the sun, because they force Monsanto dirt onto the farmers, because they're causing massive, massive weather manipulation and destroying crops. They're drilling a lot of these areas where crops are growing with tornadoes. They're drilling them with a lot of major droughts in the summer when we know that they have the capability to actually, quote unquote, make it rain, which is something people should have learned from this story in Dubai. Oh, the government can make it rain. So they're making it rain in Dubai because they don't get enough rain. And people are going, that's wonderful. But then when they get, 2 years worth of rain in one day, nobody's suspicious about it. Thought they couldn't get rain. Oh, well, in this case, they just ended up getting this random storm, even though the government's talking about how they need a new infrastructure there. Well, what a great way to get a new infrastructure and then flood everybody out. It's unbelievable, right? So then when we hear that they have the ability to do that and they talk about droughts in America, oh, things are drying up, crops are dying off. Wouldn't we think that a top issue in this country, instead of, if men could have babies or not, would be, hey, you have the ability to cloud seed and create rain. Why don't you make sure that none of our crops dry up? Because we all need food and water to live. But they don't want you critically thinking. They don't want you seeing signs like this as signs of them sending you warnings or telling you what's to come. Everybody looks at this stuff and they're just hoping and hoping and hoping that it's God's return, but they don't think for 1 second that the devil would be deceiving them and manipulating them with stories like this. It's making the news, right? The stories of the red heifers, making the news. The stories of these horses loose in London, making the news. National news, okay? That's done by design because the first thing everybody thought when they saw these horses running is what I saw a lot of the tweets and a lot of the comments out there. People are going, where are the other two horses? Where are the other two horses, right? So that means the first thing they were thinking is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And that's what the majority of people are thinking, especially with the white horse covered in blood. Because again, like I read in Revelation chapter 19, verse 11, then I saw heaven open and behold a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True. And in righteousness, he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are mighty diadems, and he has a name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood. And that horse it almost looks like, they said that the horse ran into something and was bleeding like that. But it looks like it was put on him deliberately, right? Like staged on him, like out of a movie, the way it was just perfectly all over his chest and very obvious for everyone to see. So these stories are always to manipulate. And I know everybody out there doesn't want to believe that. I know people get mad at me and they're like, who are you to question God? I'm not questioning God at all. God is the ultimate authority. I've never, ever said that God isn't the ultimate authority. But for you to think that they're not manipulating these things with the technology that they have and the control they have over the minds, and then the Bible talks about great deceptions. When I talked about the mark of the beast, and people are like, no one can be duped into the mark of the beast. What do you mean they can't be duped into the mark of the beast? They're like, they have to knowingly do it with free will and take it. Okay, but can't they be manipulated into taking it with their own free will? Well, of course they can. They're going to take it with their free will, but it doesn't mean they can't be tricked into taking it. They're not going to walk there and go, this is the mark of the beast. This means that I can't be saved anymore and I'm doomed for all eternity. Yes, sign me up. They could easily be duped into having this in their body without realizing really what they're even doing, or thinking that it's not the mark of the beast because the devil tells them it's not the mark of the beast. So we have to watch all these stories. And I'll cover the red heifers again in a separate video. I did a video on that, but now it seems as if they are actually setting a date and moving forward with this. And that means we have to keep an eye on it. Don't forget that what the devil loves to do the most is lie and deceive. He's a murderer. He's been a murderer and a liar from the beginning. Okay? And who do you think he wants to deceive the most? He's already deceived all these other people out there that believe in evolution, that believe that God isn't real, or who don't like God or don't like Christ. He's already deceived them. Ultimately, he wants to lead souls away from God. And who would he want to go after more than to deceive the minds of Christians? Remember, the Antichrist is a counterfeit Christ. He mimics Jesus. He is an opposite of Jesus, but he mimics him. He's a counterfeit. And that's why he's going to come in the name of love and peace. So that story out there, I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, hope you're informed on it. I'm interested to see what you guys think about it in the comment section. Of course, this is a channel where I want people, even if you disagree with what I'm talking about, to speak your mind, to say what you're feeling. I know it's very difficult to hear in today's society, even in churches. Like a lot of people aren't allowed to disagree with the preacher. This isn't a church, okay? I don't consider myself a minister or this a ministry. So I'm open to people's interpretations. A lot of times I'll do these videos and people will add to it. They'll be like, oh, you missed this or you forgot that. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. That's a good idea. So this channel is so that people like us, we're all like-minded people. We may not agree on everything, but we should openly be throwing ideas out there, talking about things, because some of you might see things that I don't, just like I see a lot of things that some of you don't. So let me know in the comment section what you think. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.